If I were 50 and opening my bank app to a zero balance, I would not spend the morning blaming the economy or replaying mistakes. I would make a list and start moving. Panic costs time and clarity. Calculation buys chance. This is not a pep talk about overnight riches. This is a clean, surgical plan to survive, stabilize, and then, slowly and reliably, rebuild. If you want inspirational slogans, look elsewhere. If you want a step-by-step way out of being broke at midlife, listen. First, a short but necessary reality check. You do not have endless time, but you have more time than despair. You are 50. You can reasonably expect meaningful years ahead, not for fantasies, but for disciplined, deliberate action. You're not too late. You're also not owed a rescuer. Waiting for someone else to fix this is a passive strategy that keeps you broke. Accept those facts, say them out loud, then act. If this message lands for you, save this video now so you can come back to the plan. You will need to revisit these steps, not because they're complicated, but because repetition makes them habit. There are 3 lethal illusions that wreck recovery faster than any creditor: the illusion of infinite time, the illusion of hopelessness, and the illusion that someone else will swoop in and fix it. Kill them quickly. The first illusion: I've got time. At 50, time is not so elastic. You still have a working lifetime, years to earn, save, and invest, but options narrow with delay. Skills erode, networks shift, and roles that pay decently become harder to get if you haven't kept pace. Waiting to figure it out later usually leads to late panic and rushed poor choices. Invert the assumption. Treat time as precious and allocate it like money. Every week matters. The second illusion: it's too late. That's defeat dressed as realism. If you can work, learn, and sell a product or a service, it's not too late. A disciplined 10-year plan can produce enormous change, but not too late doesn't mean easy. It simply means the door isn't closed if you're willing to do the work. The third illusion: someone will rescue me. Relatives, the market, a viral opportunity, those are hopes, not plans. Relying on rescue delays action and surrenders control. You need independence more than you need luck. Control what you can: cash, time, work, and relationships. Once those illusions are cleared, do a brutal inventory, not a pretty one, not a motivational highlight reel. A cold, itemized assessment of everything that matters for survival and rebuilding: skills, contacts, monthly costs, debts, and habits that cost you money or time. Start with skills. Write them down. Don't romanticize. List every skill that a paying client, firm, or employer could use tomorrow. Practical examples: managerial experience, bookkeeping, driving, plumbing, carpentry, IT support, sales, teaching, caregiving, writing, marketing, customer service, bilingual communication. Include soft skills that matter for paid work: reliability, punctuality, leadership, ability to learn. Next to each skill, write 1 or 2 ways to monetize it quickly. For example, if you led teams, you can offer independent project management or operations consulting to small businesses. If you drove for years, look at delivery, rideshare, or local logistics gigs that pay as you work. If you have trade experience, physically advertise locally and on marketplace apps. Sometimes neighborhood demand is immediate. Then map your contacts. Divide them into 3 columns: practical allies, neutral contacts, and drains. Practical allies are people who can help you get paid work: former managers, colleagues, clients, suppliers, neighbors who hire services. Neutral contacts might be acquaintances you can reconnect with for opportunities. Drains are people who demand time, energy, or money and give little in return. These are the relationships to quarantine, at least financially. Don't confuse loving with useful for the next 12-24 months. That's harsh, but necessary. Next, do a spending inventory. Look back 3 months and list every recurring payment and regular habit that drains cash. Subscriptions, insurance premiums, gym memberships you don't use, 2 car costs when 1 car would do, costly eating habits, habit shops, impulse purchases, loans with terrible terms. For each item, write a simple answer. Cancel, downgrade, negotiate, or defer. You will be ruthless here. No luxury is sacred until your micro-emergency fund exists and debts are on a managed path. Finally, identify self-sabotaging habits. Drinking to dull anxiety, compulsive gambling, endless scrolling, enabling other people's dependency. These are not moral failures to be shamed, but patterns that cost money and time. You must separate the emotion from the fact. Habits that reduce your earning capacity must be addressed. Small, consistent replacements. Short walks instead of bar hours, 1 meeting a week with a support network, a budgeted entertainment allocation will be far more effective than giant vows you can't keep. With this inventory done, you move to the immediate tactical plan. This plan divides the next 12 to 24 months into survival and construction phases that run simultaneously. Survival comes first because surviving creates the conditions for building. Construction is the slow, steady investment of time and attention into higher value, sustainable income. Survival rules are simple and non-negotiable. Build a micro-emergency fund, stop leaking cash, and secure any immediate income you can find. Micro-emergency fund means real cash aside from credit. Aim initially for $500 to $1,000 if cash is scarce. If you can, push toward $2,000, $5,000. The target size depends on your cost of living, but the principle is the same. Have a physical or separate bank account with cash you cannot touch for non-emergencies. This fund is not a luxury. It's the stabilizer that prevents catastrophe and avoids high-cost borrowing when something inevitable breaks. How to stock that fund immediately. Sell 1 or 2 non-essential items that have clear market demand. Tools, electronics, jewelry, seasonal gear. Do short-paid gigs this week. Driving deliveries, house cleaning, landscape work, handyman tasks, babysitting, temp warehouse shifts. Use local classifieds, gigs platforms, and community boards. Funnel the proceeds directly to the micro-emergency account. Make the rules simple and ironclad. If you are tempted to spend this money on anything but an actual emergency, you are not serious about rebuilding. Parallel to the microfund, begin a fast audit of debts. List every creditor, outstanding balance, minimum payment, interest rate, and the date of last payment. Rank them. Highest interest or worst terms first, but also flag secured debts where immediate default risks essential assets like housing or transport. Prepare for 3 immediate actions. Prioritize payments into a triage stack, call to negotiate reasonable terms, and document every agreement in writing. When you call a creditor, the goal is not to beg for forgiveness. It is to make your obligations manageable and predictable. Before you call, know the numbers, what you can afford monthly, for how long, and what you need from them. A reduced payment, a temporary forbearance, a restructuring. Speak plainly. Your script is not theatrical. I'm behind and I want to set up a sustainable payment plan. I can pay X per month starting on Y date. Can we arrange that and get the terms in writing? That is not begging. That is practicality. Record the representative's name and ask for confirmation in email or mail. If you get a temporary hardship plan, mark the calendar for follow-up 3 days before it ends. If a debt is truly unmanageable, don't dramatize. Seek a nonprofit credit counselor or a community legal clinic for guidance. Avoid predatory debt relief services and never commit to solutions that require large upfront payments. Consult a professional for complicated situations, especially if a secured asset, like your home, is at risk. At the same time, start generating immediate income. This is where hustle meets strategy. Your work should fall into 3 categories: quick cash gigs, steady income jobs, and client-facing freelance or consulting work that leverages existing experience. Quick cash gigs are for the micro fund and to stop immediate bleeding. Deliveries, grocery shifts, manual labor, temp agency placements. Steady income might be part-time retail, customer service, or a contract role with regular hours. Consulting and freelance work are where your experience will compound over months. Small businesses often need operations help, marketing, bookkeeping, or website fixes, and you can charge far more per hour for these than for quick gigs. Your week must split into 2 modes: survival and construction. Survival is the urgent engine, hours that pay today and keep you solvent. Construction is the investment engine, hours that increase your long-term earning power. Allocate them deliberately. A practical split for the first 3 months might be 60 to 70% survival work and 30 to 40% construction tasks. As your micro fund and income stabilize, adjust toward 50-50, and eventually lean further into construction. The exact split depends on your obligations. If you face immediate eviction or repossession, survival will monopolize your time until that threat is neutralized. Design a weekly rhythm. Each week, commit to a small, measurable habit that compounds. Examples that work repeatedly. Make 3 outreach calls to potential clients or employers. Apply to 5 jobs tailored to your skills. Spend 4 hours learning a narrowly useful skill, like basic Excel or bookkeeping fundamentals. Make 1 debt negotiation call and deposit at least $25 into your micro fund. These are modest, repeatable actions. They move the needle when done consistently. Set checkpoints. At 6 weeks, you should have your micro emergency fund started, at least one of the major creditors on a manageable plan, and a steady flow of gig income that covers immediate living expenses. At 3 months, you should be making regular deposits to the micro fund, have at least one steady income source, and be layering in construction work that increases hourly rates. If those 3 checkpoints are missed, correct aggressively. Adjust your survival hours upward and your spending downward until you can meet them. Conversations with family and dependents require a particular approach. You must be honest without being unmoored. Prepare a short, calm explanation that communicates responsibility and a clear plan. For example, I'm in a tight spot financially. I'm building a plan, micro emergency fund, a repayment schedule, and new income sources. I may need to change how we handle money for a while. I'll share updates monthly. That is accountable. It invites trust building, not guilt. Resist the urge to overshare details that create drama or to make promises you can't keep. Small, reliable follow-through is the currency of reputation. Reputation, in fact, is one of your primary rebuilt assets. When you are broke, your word matters more than your balance. Small, consistent acts of reliability, showing up, paying what you can, returning calls, shift how people perceive you. Hand in a week's worth of consistent small payments rather than a grand theoretical promise. If you tell a neighbor you'll fix a fence on Saturday, do it. Reputation turns into referrals, recommendations, and opportunities that cash alone doesn't buy. Now, some concrete money architecture. You must physically separate funds into buckets, even if the buckets live in one bank with labeled sub-accounts. Have a survival account for immediate living, a micro-emergency account you don't touch, and a construction account for tools and education. Automate deposits where you can. Pay yourself a tiny fixed amount, $25 or $50 each week, into the micro fund. It sounds small, and that's the point. Habit formation is more important than heroic one-offs. Avoid using credit to rebuild, especially high-interest credit, unless it's short-term and unavoidable. Credit can be a trap that erases any incremental progress. Prefer cash-based piecing together. Sell, gig, borrow small amounts from friends only if it's a last resort and with a written agreement, and never resort to fraud or identity misuse. If an emergency requires more than your microfund, consult a professional counselor or community resource before taking risky debt. At the same time, do simple math toward milestones. A clear, reachable midterm goal is $10,000 in accessible savings. That's not a magical number. It's a workable buffer that opens options. Better negotiating power. The ability to take a higher quality job that requires transition time and insulation from short-term shocks. Work backward. Deposit $250 a month for 3 years, plus lump sums. Or more practically in a rebuild, combine steady savings with concentrated one-off efforts. Side gig pushes, selling assets, tax refunds, to reach $10,000 faster. Beyond that, a disciplined 10-year objective to have $100,000 in liquid or near-liquid assets is a reasonable target for midlife reconstruction. But don't leap to that immediately. First secure the microfund, then 10K, then scale. Avoid two dangerous entrepreneurial traps, the flashy bet and the debt-fueled startup. A high-risk business funded by credit cards or loans is not rebuilding. It's gambling with your future. Prefer a simple, service-based income that leverages what you already know. Small-scale consulting, trades, tutoring, caregiving, and local services produce revenue quickly and scale with repeat customers. If you do start a business, bootstrap it. Minimal upfront investment, revenue-first model, and no additional debt until you have steady profits. Make firm rules for money that are non-negotiable. Call them the laws of reconstruction. Law 1, pay yourself first into the microfund. Law 2, no new high-interest debt. Law 3, every dollar has a job. Budget it to survival, debt, or rebuild. Law 4, track every incoming and outgoing dollar weekly. These rules are unromantic, and that's why they work. Practical negotiation tactics with creditors are straightforward and human. You're asking for predictability, not absolution. Be concise, factual, and prepared. Know your bottom line offer. Ask for written confirmation. Ask about lowering interest rates, pausing late fees, or extending terms to lower monthly payments. If a creditor refuses, move on. There are often multiple avenues to reduce burden, nonprofit counseling, consumer protection offices, or placing priority on the debt that threatens your essentials. Document every interaction. Good documentation is leverage and protection. Now let's talk about small, early wins that change psychology. Celebrate them in a way that fuels further discipline, not with lavish spending. Your first $500 in the micro fund is significant. Your first successful negotiation putting a debt on a manageable schedule is significant. Your first week with steady gig income that covers groceries is significant. Mark those wins with a small, non-costly ritual. A printed check mark on a calendar, a short text to a trusted friend that says, "I did the thing," a 5-minute reflection on what worked that week. These tiny celebrations build momentum more reliably than grand fantasies about the future. A typical first 30-day playbook looks like this. Day 1, complete the brutal inventory and set up the microfund. Day 2-7, sell 1 or 2 non-essentials, sign up for local gig work, and do the first creditor call. Day 8-14, start applying for steady jobs, do 3 networking outreaches, and begin the weekly habit of depositing to the microfund. Day 15-30, secure at least 1 steady income source and continue the construction work. A small freelance project, a course sign-up in a narrowly useful skill, or a client proposal. At the end of 30 days, assess, do you have some cash in the microfund? Have you set up at least 1 manageable payment or plan with a creditor? Do you have at least 1 incoming lead for ongoing income? If yes, you move forward. If no, intensify survival efforts and scale down construction until stability returns. One more practical detail: separate emotion from transactions. When you call a creditor, don't rehearse the apology. Rehearse the numbers. When you request permission from family to cut back, present the plan, not the complaint. When you pitch a client, present a 1-page offer, what you do, the outcome, and the price. Financial emergencies are solved by clear exchanges. Time for money, skill for pay, not by theatrical confessions. At the end of the first month, you should have a simple dashboard. Micro fund balance, list of prioritized debts with actions, weekly income hours divided between survival and construction, and a calendar of 1 networking or client outreach per week. Keep it visible. Use a paper notebook, a simple spreadsheet, or an app, whatever you will actually check daily. You will encounter resistance. A neighbor asking you to loan money, an old friend insisting on a night out, the urge to take a high-risk opportunity pitched by a smooth talker. Those are tests. Your response to those tests defines whether you will reconstruct or replay the same mistakes. Say no to requests that undermine your microfund or increase unmanageable obligations. Keep your circle tight with people who respect the plan or at least don't sabotage it. Now, imagine the next stage. You have a started microfund, a trimmed expense sheet, a prioritized debt list with at least 1 creditor on an agreed plan, and a small but steady income flow from survival work. You are exhausted because rebuilding at 50 is not gentle, but you can see progress. This is where reputation repair begins in earnest. Make a short, honest outreach list. 2 creditors you have negotiated with and need confirmation from. 3 contacts who might hire you for short work, and 1 family member who needs an update. Send 3 texts, make 2 calls, and write 1 follow-up email. This is low drama, but high leverage. You will also need to make a choice about social pruning. Not all relationships are rebuild friendly. Some people will keep pulling you into old habits. offering shortcuts that are actually traps, or siphoning scarce resources with endless needs. You can be kind and set boundaries. For the next 12 or 24 months, prioritize relationships that are either emotionally sustaining without costing money or practically helpful. Those who give leads, referrals, or honest advice and who respect your timeline. The noisy, high-demand, low-return friendships are distractions you cannot afford right now. At this stage, a practical tool is the one-week audit. For one full week, write down every social interaction that costs time or money. At week's end, mark them as sustain, neutral, or prune. Use that data to reduce obligations that are draining. This is not cruelty, it's resource management. As the first month closes, shift more time into intentionally building market value. If you manage to reclaim 2 or 3 hours daily for construction work, use them for one of 3 high-leverage activities. Sharpen a specific skill tied to paid work. Create a small product or offering you can sell in a week. Or aggressively network in a narrow niche where your experience matters. The aim is to turn construction hours into higher rates per hour. Even a 20% increase in what you can charge changes your trajectory dramatically over a year. Finally, hold yourself to the simplest accountability metrics: microfund balance, number of creditor arrangements secured, monthly net income from survival work, and hours per week dedicated to construction. Update these numbers every Sunday evening. If they're moving in the right direction, keep the course. If not, change one thing: the number of gig hours, the spending cuts, the outreach volume, and keep moving. At the point where you have taken these initial steps, you will feel 2 things: uncomfortable discipline and nascent control. Both are necessary. The discomfort means you are changing habits. The control means you are reclaiming agency over your financial future. By now you should have a started micro-emergency fund, at least one creditor call completed with a follow-up action, some immediate income streams plugged in, and a weekly checklist of construction tasks. Your identity must now shift from someone overwhelmed to someone rebuilding, small, steady, and non-negotiable. What comes next is deeper and less solitary. Pruning toxic financial relationships, rebuilding reputation publicly and privately, and scaling the $10,000 milestone into achievable steps. Those are social and strategic plays that require nuance and patience. But the work that unlocks them happens in the week-to-week habits you've just set up. The micro deposits, the creditor calls, the steady outreach, and the refusal to accept rescue fantasies. If you have made that first call, placed that first deposit, and marked your first weekly wins, you are past the point of mere intention. You have begun the mechanical part of reconstruction. The next moves: how to prune your circle without burning bridges, how to convert a small consulting gig into steady clients, and how to structure a decade-long plan to hit $100,000 while avoiding risky leverage, are practical, but they require an earlier foundation to hold them. So pause here and do the actionable. Open a separate micro account, deposit any cash you can spare today, write down every debt with numbers and dates, and pick one person from your contacts to message about possible work. Then complete one quick sale, something you can list and sell within 48 hours. This muscle work creates momentum. It is not glamorous, but it is powerful. You will be tempted to look for a single revelation that changes everything: an app, a course, a mentor with a magic connection. Those can help, but they rarely replace consistent, directed action. The strategy that lasts is boring, steady income, disciplined saving, cautious negotiation, and focused skill building. Keep your plan visible and make the first 6-month checkpoint non-negotiable. By 6 months, you must have a real micro-emergency fund, at least one restructured debt, and a steady income mix that covers non-discretionary expenses. When you make the 6-month review, measure not only dollars, but behavior. Did you keep weekly deposits? Did you do the calls you promised? Did you prune relationships that cost you progress? If not, fix those behaviors before you chase bigger financial goals. Financial solidity is the product of consistent behavior, not grand plans. At the center of this work is an identity shift. Say it clearly. I am rebuilding. Repeat it until choices become automatic. That identity enforces discipline more effectively than guilt or panic ever will. It changes how you spend time, how you answer requests, and how you present yourself to potential employers and clients. If you can become the person who does small, hard things reliably, the opportunities and the money follow. You are now at a practical crossroads. You have the inventory, the micro fund started, and the survival engines running. The next stage is social pruning and reputation reconstruction. How to tell people, how to stop being drained, and how to convert small wins into a stable $10,000 accessible buffer. Those are the moves that transform a fragile recovery into something durable. Before we go there, make sure the foundation is set. 3 weeks of deposits, 2 creditor conversations logged, 1 new steady gig, and a short list of contacts to call for potential freelance or consulting work. When those are in place, you are ready to move into the social and strategic plays that scale recovery beyond survival. You are not done yet. You have a tiny momentum and a map. Now you must turn that map into territory. The next stage is social pruning, reputation repair, and the step-by-step math that takes you from a fragile micro fund to a solid $10,000 buffer, and over a disciplined decade toward $100,000. None of it is glamorous. All of it is repeatable. Start with social pruning, because money and people are the 2 resources that will either save you or sink you. The 1-week audit I mentioned earlier is non-negotiable. For 7 days, write down every engagement that costs time or money. Include dinners, rides, favors asked of you, and social calls that lead to spending. At week's end, categorize each interaction. Sustain, neutral, prune. Sustain means it supports you emotionally without costing money, or it actively helps. Someone who offers leads, a neighbor who trades services, a sibling who provides cheap housing. Neutral is tolerable, but not helpful. Prune is the person or group that encourages bad choices, asks for money constantly, or consumes time without return. Then act. Pruning does not mean cruelty. It means boundaries. You tell people, politely and plainly, I'm pruning my commitments for the next 12 months while I rebuild. I'll check in regularly, but I can't lend or host right now. That sentence, delivered calmly, preserves dignity and protects your plan. For family conversations, prepare a short script that focuses on facts and plans, not on apologies or dramatics. Say something like, I'm tightening our budget and changing how I handle money. I've started a small emergency account, I'm negotiating my debts, and I'm taking extra work to stabilize things. I'll give you a short update every month. Keep updates to 2 minutes. If a family member asks for money, respond with a standard, I can't lend right now, but here are 3 practical ways I can help. Helping you apply for assistance, connecting you to a job lead, or helping with a short-term itemized budget. That preserves relationships while avoiding financial drains. Rebuilding reputation is quieter but more powerful than a single loan or a viral miracle. Reputation rebuilds by doing small, reliable things over and over. The easiest currency here is consistency. Make a list of 5 people whose opinion or potential referrals matter. Former managers, ex-clients, a neighbor with a small business. For each person, commit to 1 reliable action this month. An email that admits a short delay but offers a new realistic date with a small payment. A completed small job for a reduced but fair fee. Or a simple thank you note with an attached short status update. Don't make grand promises. Make small deliverables and keep them. People forgive mistakes when they see consistent corrective action. Now the math and the timeline, the microfund is your first safe harbor. The midterm target is $10,000 in accessible savings. That amount does 3 things. It reduces the immediate anxiety that prompts reckless choices. It gives you negotiating leverage with creditors and landlords, and it allows you to take one carefully chosen opportunity that may require a small runway. How to reach it depends on where you start. If you can deposit $250 a month, you'll reach $10,000 in about 40 months before accounting for any one-time boosts. If you can push to $500 a month, you reach it in 20 months. If you do an intense 3-month selling blitz and clear $3,000 in one go, that reduces the time dramatically. The point is to combine steady deposits with concentrated efforts, steady habits plus occasional sprints. Here's a practical roadmap, month by month, for the first 24 months. Months 0-3. Microfund started, at least 1 debt on a manageable plan, steady gig income covering living essentials, and the weekly rhythm established. Months 4-6. Microfund grows to a substantive pocket, $1,000, $2,000 depending on region. At least 2 creditor agreements documented, and construction hours begin to yield higher paying contracts or longer gigs. Months 7-12. Ramp deposits into a separate savings bucket, increase hourly rates or client fees where possible, and consolidate a predictable monthly net income that covers non-discretionary costs. Month 12 is a formal checkpoint. If you do not have an incrementally larger microfund, at least 1 restructured debt, and an ongoing client or steady job covering essentials, revise aggressively. Months 13-24. Aim to hit the $10,000 accessible buffer with continued side efforts, bonuses, sale of non-essentials, or targeted seasonal work. Use each year-end to lock 1 small policy, pay off 1 unsecured debt, stop 1 unnecessary recurring expense, and upgrade 1 marketable skill that increases rates. This leads to the 10-year objective, $100,000 as a reasonable disciplined goal for a midlife rebuild. The arithmetic is modest and boring. If you save $500 a month for 10 years, that is $60,000 in raw deposits. Add modest returns from safe, low-cost investments and occasional lump sums, tax refunds, sale proceeds, bonuses, and reaching $100,000 becomes credible. But don't view the 10-year number as a bet on returns or luck. View it as evidence of behavioral change. The $100,000 objective is valuable because it forces you to choose stability over flash and patience over panic. Now, practical choices about work and income. Lean into what pays reliably and scales with reputation. Service-based businesses are your friend. They charge for hours or discrete outcomes tied to experience you already have. Bookkeeping, operations consulting, copywriting, home repairs, caregiving, tutoring, and short-term project management. A local business owner will gladly pay $50 or $100 an hour for help that solves immediate operational headaches. You have decades of accumulated competence, even if your resume feels ragged. Frame offers and outcomes. I will clean up your books for the quarter and implement 2 simple processes that save you time each month. That sells better than vague promises about general help. If you must pursue higher return projects, bootstrap them. A bootstrap approach means minimal upfront investment, revenue first validation, and no new personal debt. Test with 1 or 2 paying customers before you scale. Avoid the trap of borrowing to fund the dream. Debt-funded ventures often shift you from rebuild to relapse. If you are tempted into a high-risk opportunity pitched by someone who promises rapid scale, ask for one assurance. Can you get a paying customer within 30 days without additional spending? If the answer is no, it's not a rebuild play. On investments, be conservative until your buffer is solid. Use high-yield savings accounts, short-term certificates, or conservative savings vehicles to house your microfund and early reserves. If you decide to invest beyond those buffers, favor low-cost broad funds or diversified options and keep contributions modest. Automate small amounts once a month. The goal in this phase is not to time markets. It's to avoid catastrophic loss and to build the habit of regular saving. Decision architecture is critical. You must build in non-negotiable rules that govern every money and people decision. Here are the 6 intransigent decisions you adopt now and keep until you no longer need them to survive. First, identity. You are not someone who's behind. You are someone rebuilding. Say it daily. The words change your choices. When a friend suggests a night of drinking that costs money and time, the identity outvotes the impulse. Second, standard. Live below what you could. That does not mean living in permanent scarcity. It means choosing a standard that prioritizes rebuilding. If one car will do, sell the second. If you have 2 streaming services and one is unused, cancel both and keep one free alternative. Standards remove decision fatigue and conserve cash. Third, professional focus. Pick one income path and stick to it for a minimum of 6 months. Scattering effort wastes time. If you choose consulting, measure outreach and conversion rates for 12 weeks. If you choose part-time work plus gigs, keep the schedule reproducible and predictable. Narrow focus compounds faster than scattered attempts. Fourth, the cash rule. Pay yourself first into the microfund. Automate if you can. Even $25 a week is an oath you keep with yourself. Never touch the microfund for non-emergencies. Treat it as sacred work capital. Fifth, the people filter. For 12-24 months, limit your exposure to high-demand, low-return relationships. Protect your schedule and your cash. Say no quickly and politely. Keep a short list of 3 people who genuinely aid your rebuild and spend most of your relational energy there. Sixth, time discipline. Block calendar hours for survival and construction. See those blocks as appointments you cannot cancel except for major emergencies. Time discipline is how you ensure the construction engine gets fed while survival work pays the bills. Put those decisions into practice with a weekly checklist you will actually follow. Every Sunday evening, Update your simple dashboard. Current micro fund balance, one-line status of top 3 debts, number of paid hours in survival work last week, number of construction hours logged, 3 outreach attempts made, and 1 win to celebrate. From that dashboard set, 5 small tasks for the week. 2 survival shifts or paid gigs, 2 construction blocks, learning, outreach, client work, and 1 administrative task, creditor follow-up, list update, sell item online. This is repeatable and measurable. If weeks go by without progress in one axis, intensify the corresponding action for the next 2 weeks. Negotiation with creditors is a recurring practice, not a dramatic one-time event. Do not wait for the call to be perfect. Before every call, write down 3 numbers: what you owe, what you can pay monthly realistically, and what you want from the creditor. Lower payment, pause, interest relief, simple forbearance. Use plain language. I can pay X dollars per month. If you accept that, I need written confirmation to keep this plan. Keep emotions minimal and numbers central. Treat the representative as someone who can make an option feasible, not your adversary, and always follow up in writing. If they cannot help, ask about hardship programs and then ask where to apply. Nonprofit credit counseling is a useful resource for complex cases. Use it rather than predatory companies that promise relief for an upfront fee. Let's talk about small investments in skills that yield disproportionate returns. Learn software that increases your marketability. Basic Excel, simple accounting software, a content management system for local businesses. Take focused, cheap courses that produce a product within weeks. A 1-month bookkeeping crash course that lets you offer a bookkeeping cleanup service. A short digital marketing class that gives you enough to manage a single local business ad campaign, or a certification for a trade if you're leaning that way. The aim is skill to income. Invest time short-term for a concrete service you can sell quickly. The psychology of rebuilding matters as much as the math. You will face shame, fatigue, and offers to revert to old habits for quick relief. Treat those moments like friction in physical therapy. Expect them, plan for them, and keep moving. Ritualize 2 practices that stabilize mood and momentum. A weekly review where you record your wins and a simple daily primer that takes 5 minutes. List 3 things you will do today for survival and 2 for construction. The 5-minute primer keeps your mind oriented to actions rather than anxieties. Be explicit about what you will not do. No new high-interest debt. No lending money you would miss. No secret spending. No hiding from creditors or family. These negative commitments are as important as positive ones because they prevent relapse. Now, the social aspects of scaling from the microfund to $10,000 and beyond. Convert small jobs into steady clients by over-delivering modestly and asking for referrals. If you fix a neighbor's fence for a reasonable price, finish early, clean up, and leave a 1-page card with a simple offer. If you know someone who needs X, call me. Ask for a short testimonial you can use when you contact other prospects. Word of mouth is inexpensive and powerful at this stage. As you approach the $10,000 milestone, begin to think about liquidity management. Keep at least a portion, your microfund and a portion of the $10,000, very accessible. Do not deploy the entire buffer into volatile investments. Use the $10,000 to create options. The ability to negotiate a short, unpaid transition into a better job, To pay for a credential that increases rates, or to absorb a shock without resorting to predatory debt? When opportunities require money, run a simple test. Is this expense essential to changing my income trajectory within 90 days? If yes, it might be worth part of the buffer. If not, defer. Avoid easy narratives during this process. People will try to sell you the pivot or the magic course or the shiny business plan. Those may be legitimate, but treat them as experiments with their own risk budgets. Give each new project a simple funnel. Test with one paying customer in 30 days, cap your investment at a fixed percentage of your microfund, and define a clear stop condition. If the test doesn't produce paying customers or a clear path forward, stop and pivot to other, lower risk efforts. There will come a time when you can breathe a little and look beyond the immediate buffer. That moment is when construction becomes the primary engine and survival the supporting act. You will gradually shift the weekly ratio from 70-30 survival construction to 50-50 and eventually to 30-70 if feasible. But don't rush. If you accelerate construction too early, you may blow the microfund and be back at zero. Accountability is essential. Find one practical accountability partner, someone who either shares similar goals or who will check your weekly dashboard. It does not need to be a paid coach. It can be a friend, a former colleague, or a neighbor with steady habits. The point is externalizing one simple weekly check. Did you make the deposits? Did you call the creditor? Did you complete the outreach? If not, why not? Accountability sharpens follow-through. When you reach specific milestones, your first $1,000 microfund balance, your first creditor agreement in writing, your first month with stable net income equal to essentials, celebrate in a way that does not undo progress. A modest treat, a nice home-cooked meal with a trusted friend, a $5 purchase that feels symbolic. These tiny rituals are feedback loops that keep you moving. Do not reward yourself with anything that costs more than a day's worth of wages or that undermines future progress. Legal and complex financial issues deserve professional help. If you are facing eviction, foreclosure, wage garnishment, or complicated tax questions, consult a lawyer or nonprofit legal aid. If debt levels are overwhelming and involve secured assets, speak to housing counselors or certified credit counselors. Avoid companies that require large upfront fees to negotiate your debts. Use trusted nonprofit resources and community clinics wherever possible. That is a practical rule. When a situation requires expertise beyond negotiation scripts and discipline, get counsel. Now the longer arc. How to make this durable. The single most dangerous tendency after initial success is to let standards slip. You will feel relief and deserve it, but the slip back into old patterns is subtle. Keep the intransigent decisions in force for at least 2 years. Keep paying yourself first. Keep the weekly dashboard. Keep your accountability partner. Stability is about habits, not heroic turns. Another long arc trap is the temptation to rely on one lucky client or a single sale to solve everything. Don't. Diversify your income sources even at a small scale. 2 small clients and a part-time job is safer than one large client whose contract could end abruptly. Diversification in this sense is insurance, not greed. As you build toward $100,000 over a decade, think in multiples of behavior. If you automate $250 a month into savings and increase your income by $200 a month via steady side work in 2 years, You have created a structural advantage that compound money alone cannot provide. The habit of paying yourself, of contacting customers, of showing up to gigs, of saying no to drains, those habits compound into options. Options are a kind of wealth. Let's return to the three archetypes you face and the choice at the heart of this process. First is the victim, someone who believes that circumstances are the cause and will determine outcomes. This person waits for external rescue and blames external forces. The victim stays broke longer because blame is easier than work. Second is the negator, the person who pretends nothing happened, spends as before, and hopes the past turns into a future without pain. That choice stalls progress and doubles the cost later. Third is the transformer, the person who accepts the facts, behaves with urgency and discipline, prunes relentlessly, and constructs patiently. Transformation is not heroic in flashy ways. It is methodical, sometimes slow, and resolute. Which one are you choosing? If you are listening to this and you have already made one deposit, you have chosen to transform. The behavior matters more than the identity you wore yesterday. Keep choosing it every day. Before we close, a practical list of do-now actions. Deposit any spare cash into the micro account today. Even $20 matters for discipline. Make one creditor call and document the outcome. Post one useful offer in a local marketplace or contact one old colleague about short-term work. Sell one item you don't need in the next 48 hours. Block 3 hours this week for construction work and treat that time as immovable. Do these 5 things and you will have moved from intention to action. One final piece of counsel on dignity. Rebuilding at 50 is humbling. You will lose little illusions and learn big lessons. The good news is that once you embrace the work, dignity returns faster than you expect. Paying a small weekly amount toward a debt, showing up to a gig, delivering a clean job on time, those acts restore self-respect. Money follows the restoration of trust. That is why reputation repair matters as much as the numbers. I won't promise you a miracle. Nobody should. But if you accept the facts, prune what drains you, save a little each week, negotiate plainly, and invest your time in repeatable, income-generating actions, you will build a different life, slower, more secure, and more in your control. Rebuilding is not a single dramatic event. It is a long series of small decisions that favor stability over spectacle. If you commit to one small step right now, subscribe and save this video so you can check back and measure progress. Return to the plan, repeat the actions, and make the micro deposit today. Start with one small cash deposit today. Choose to be unbreakable. If you keep doing the work, the money will follow in due course. Share this with someone who needs quiet, practical help, and save it to hold yourself accountable.